very much. We have time for a couple of questions, but can I ask, are there a few students in the room? Can I ask you a question? You've been listening and you know what's going on in the world. What worries you? What do you see going forward? Do you see a rosy world of enormous opportunities, or are you worried about that digital transition? The young lady in the back there, do we have the microphone? Who's the young lady in the back there?
I come from Turkey, and we have a lot of unskilled and untalented people. And another issue is that we have a lot of refugees who have skills and who have no skills as well. And one of my major concerns is that being an underdeveloped country and not producing many products, mainly importing, technology will create a big impact in our employment. And what worries me is that there's a big amount of people who are not educated enough, very lowly educated, and will not be able to get into those jobs. And those people are also really easily join fundamental and dangerous groups. So my view scares me when I see countries like my country, when technology comes and takes away their jobs, and they do not have the education and what can happen from them, because they have the potential of becoming aggressive as well.
I think that's certainly a concern. Anybody want to answer that for a moment? Pardon? Okay, another question. I'll take a couple of questions and then we'll.
I think what concerns me is like right now there are too many part-time jobs, including those like 23% good jobs. There are some mainly part-time jobs, like consulting jobs. So that concerns me for my long-term careers. And also, like the funding for the labor training, with the technology change, each labor needs the training probably once, 1 year, maybe every 10 years. So where the money come from? It could be from employer, from government, or individual savings. But, government has so much debt, also healthcare, pensions, So, I'm very concerned about the government and individual.
So let me ask, Robert, did you probably just hear those questions from the students?
I did.
So do you have maybe you can lead a response to their concerns?
Sure. So the lady from Turkey, I think the challenge in Turkey is not a poor country, but it's certainly not an OECD rich country either. And I think the challenge for countries like that is a little bit of a chicken or egg. There's a high preponderance of low-skilled jobs, partly because there's a high preponderance of low-skilled workers. And a number of good studies that talk about countries can fall into essentially a low-income, low-skill trap. Employers don't demand higher skills because the workers don't have them. They don't use then more complex technology. And then the employees don't get higher skills because the employers can't use them. And so I think in a country like Turkey or other similar countries, it really requires a kind of joint effort by employers and the government at the same time to all work together to sort of raise skills and raise companies' ability to use technology and better skills. One last thing on that, at least according to the evidence that I've been looking at, the transition I think is going to be slower in countries like Turkey. This is largely going to be a transition driven in high-wage countries because the technology the payoff and the ROI from technology is higher in high-wage countries. With regard to the part-time jobs question, I know it feels like that because we hear about it all the time, but the most recent study from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that looked at contingent work and compared it to, I believe, 2006, found that there were actually fewer contingent jobs, part-time jobs, consulting, gig, contract jobs, all the actually slightly fewer than there were in 2006. So it feels like that's what's going on, but the reality is it's not. There's still many, many full-time permanent positions in the U.S. economy. I don't believe that's going to change. And then the last question is, where does the money come from? There's pretty clear evidence that these programs, if designed right, more than pay for themselves through both higher productivity when workers go back to work, and then also getting workers back into the workforce sooner so that they're contributing and not taking out from the economy in terms of welfare, unemployment insurance, or the things like this. So it is something that if government are smart about it, that it really should be seen as an investment. There are lots of different models. One model that a lot of people have been talking about, we've written about it, are individual employment accounts or individual training accounts where uh, companies can fund them, workers can fund them all tax-free, sort of like an IRA. Government can contribute for low-wage workers. So there's a lot of different models of how to support that financially.
One more question, a young man right in the middle there. Were you raising your hand? You, yeah. Nope, okay. Is there another question for Bob Atkinson? Okay. I think Bob has a question for Bob. Maybe?
In the case of Turkey, I think you might want to look at places like India, where probably the standard of living and the average wage was not so different than yours. I think there was a real effort made to become almost kind of a data analytics, data evaluation, and software development center or platform. And I think many more countries are going to see that happen, especially as it becomes easier to acquire some of the skills. I mean, in the US, we have efforts like AI for All, which is an effort at Princeton, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, and a few other universities to train minority women and men during the summer months to learn how to code. And then they can go out and do projects locally to look at water pollution, et cetera. And I think that this shows that it's not, you don't have to be a genius to begin to develop that kind of skill within your population, that if there were a real effort to become kind of a center for these changes, that would provide a real way to grow. So I don't necessarily agree with Bob that it's only the high-wage countries that are going to be the biggest beneficiaries, because we already have the case of India, which I think has proven that given a little bit of effort, it can do pretty much almost as well as China when it comes to being a developing center for software.
Can I call upon Ellie Noam to summarize and end?
Well, and you too.